This week has seen Botswana head to the polls in one of Africa's most stable of democracies, and Egypt and Ethiopia are set to meet in the United States of America over the hydropower dam on Ethiopia's Blue Nile. This is Africa Focus.
Electricity a luxury in poor Madagascar. Moroccan journalist jailed for abortion freed after royal pardon. Public buses return to Tripoli after 30 years.
I'm Lenny Rashid, and our sign language interpreter today is Teresia Washira. Before we get into the main stories, let's take a look at the news that made the headlines around the continent this week.
Thousands of Sudanese rallied in several cities, including capital Khartoum, urging the country's new authorities to dissolve the former ruling party of ousted Islamic leader Omar al-Bashir. Crowds of men and women rallied in Khartoum, its twin city of Omdurman, Madani, Al-Obeid, Port Sudan, and in the town of Zalinge in a war-torn Darfur, expressing their support for the new authorities who are tasked with the country's transition to a civilian rule. The rallies, organized by umbrella protest movement Forces of Freedom and Change, was also meant to demand justice for the martyrs killed during the months-long uprising that led to Bashir's ouster in April. The former mayor of Dakar, Khalifa Sall, was hailed by jubilant supporters as he crossed the Senegalese capital in a convoy during the night following his release from prison. President Macky Sall pardoned his former political rival, who had been sentenced for fraudulent use of public funds. The move surprised many Senegalese, although it comes amid a de-escalation of political tensions orchestrated by Muslim leaders. Khalifa Sall, no relation to the president, has been in jail since March 2017 and was sentenced to 5 years in prison in August 2018. He was therefore barred from taking part in presidential elections in February. As the news of his pardon spread, hundreds of his supporters gathered late Sunday outside the Rebus prison in Dakar, from where he emerged a few hours later. The right-hand man of Gambia's former president Yahya Jammeh admitted being partially responsible for the arrest, torture and execution of suspected political opponents during the leader's 22-year reign. British-born Singhate held a number of top government positions, including that of defense minister under Jammeh, who fled the country in January 2017 after losing presidential elections and initially refusing to step down. Jammeh had come to power in a bloodless coup in July 1994 and was repeatedly re-elected in disputed circumstances until being defeated in December 2016 by the relatively unknown Adama Barrow. After other West African states intervened in the Central African state of Equatorial Guinea. Human rights activists accused Jammeh's regime of torturing opponents, summary execution, forced disappearance and rape. Singhate has admitted personally arresting two key figures involved in the 1994 coup, Sana Sabali and Sibadu Hayadara, who Jammeh suspected of plotting against him.
This past week, police in northern Nigeria rescued over 300 young men from an Islamic boarding school where they were chained and sexually abused, the second such operation in a month. The raid comes after some students escaped the school and revealed the barbaric conditions they were living in.
Police in northern Nigeria rescued nearly 70 men and boys from a second purported Islamic school where they were shackled and subjected to inhuman and degrading treatments.
If you do not finish it, they are going to beat you thoroughly. If you vomit, you eat the food together with the vomit. And when you want to go to bathroom or toilet, you'll be naked, bathing, and they'll be together, they'll be caning you. And when you go to bed, when you want to sleep, you'll be laid like bags or like dead bodies, 40 people inside one room.
The raid in Katsina, the northwestern home state of President Muhammadu Buhari, came less than a month after 300 men and boys were freed from another supposedly Islamic school in the neighboring Kaduna state, where they were allegedly tortured and sexually abused.
I think the situation became so bad that they could no longer bear it. So I think it was yesterday that they revolted and started rioting and escaping from this facility.
The raid occurred on 12th in Sabon Garin in the Daura local government area of Katsina State. Police issued a statement and said they were working to reunite the victims with their families. Islamic schools known as Al-Majiris are common across the mostly Muslim north of Nigeria. Muslim rights concern MURIC, a local organization, estimated about 10 million children attended them. In June, President Buhari himself, a Muslim, said the government planned to ban the schools but would not do so immediately. After the incidents in Kaduna, the president issued a statement calling on traditional authorities to work with the government to expose unwanted cultural practices that amount to the abuse of children. Buhari's office declined to immediately comment on Katsina raid, saying it would issue a statement after full briefing from police.
The Ebola epidemic in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo has been confined to a smaller area, but one that is remote, rife with militias and people on the move.
The number of the new confirmed cases in the year-old outbreak has been dropping steadily to 14 infections last week from 51 in mid-September and nearly 130 at its peak in April. More than 3,200 people are known to have been infected with the deadly virus, of whom 2,144 have died. Dr. Mike Ryan, Executive Director of World Health Organization's Emergencies Program, told a news conference in Geneva that the virus is essentially contained in a triangle stretching from Mombasa, Komanda, Oicha and Mandima, where it is transmitting at a low level.
That we have significantly contained the virus in a much smaller geographic area. Now we have to kill the virus. The problem is it's back in areas that are deeply insecure. We've got mining operations in these areas, lots of people who live in villages and work in mines most of the time. There's legal and illegal operations going on in that zone. We have multiple Mai groups, very, very big ADF presence in these areas, and ADF has clearly demonstrated over the last few months that it's been carrying out more and more attacks, and you'll read that from other sources. So cautious optimism.
Ryan also said that the mining operations, legal and illegal, abound in the zone where people go back and forth to their villages.
Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta expressed his thanks on Wednesday for China's assistance in building a standard gauge railway linking the country's capital Nairobi to the resort town of Naivasha. The 120-kilometer project will see express passengers and freight services commence.
The Nairobi-Naivasha Railway started operation on Wednesday after 21 months of construction and testing. It is the first phase of the SGR project connecting Nairobi with Malaba on the border with Uganda, and also an extension of the Mombasa-Nairobi SGR, which opened 2 years ago and has helped transport from the capital to the coast. Kenyatta delivered a speech at the launching ceremony of the first phase of the Nairobi-Malaba SGR project at the Mai Mahiu station regarding China and the Chinese people as true friends of Kenya who helped his country.
Today, we are marking yet another milestone with the commissioning of this 120-kilometer Nairobi-Naivasha SGR, which is phase 2A of the entire SGR project. The completion of the Nairobi to Suswa section of the SGR project is expected to revolutionize the development of the surrounding areas.
The railway line is expected to ease congestion at the Nairobi-Naivasha highway, as well as boost regional trade and local economy.
Economic infrastructure projects, such as the road and railway infrastructure in developing countries, should not be viewed as profit-making investments, but as a means of spurring socio-economic growth in our countries.
The Nairobi-Naivasha SGR is approximately 120 kilometers long and cuts along Nairobi, Ngong, Kajiado, Nakuru and Narok counties. The passenger train will stop at 5 stations: Ongaturungai, Ngong, Nachu, Maimahio and Suswa in Naivasha. A Nairobi-Suswa ticket costs 200 Kenya shillings or about $2 US. The speed of the passenger train is 120 kilometers per hour, while cargo trains are 80 kilometers per hour.
A critical mass of quality integrated transport infrastructure network is so important in spurring economic growth as it improves the investment climate and raises our competitiveness as a nation.
The journey between Nairobi and Naivasha on average is 2.5 hours by road. Now, the travel time is cut by half, making it easier for commuters to access the capital.
We therefore then embarked on a journey of developing the standard gauge railway jointly with partner states of Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan. As a result, we completed the first phase of the Mombasa-Nairobi standard gauge railway, which commenced passenger and freight services last year. To date, we have moved more than 3.5 million passengers and 6 million tons of freight.
The second phase linking Nairobi and the border with Uganda is under construction by China Communications and a construction company at a cost of 150 billion Kenyan shillings.
Coming up after the break.
Nigerian police rescue hundreds from another torture house Quranic school.
Africa Focus takes a breather. We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial. Keep it switched. Welcome back to Africa Focus. Moroccan journalist Hajar Raizouni, who was sentenced to 1 year in jail for an illegal abortion and sexual relations outside marriage, walked freely shortly after being granted a royal pardon.
Moroccan journalist Hajar Raizouni, who was sentenced to 1 year in jail for an illegal abortion and sexual relations outside marriage, walked free shortly after being granted a royal pardon. In a case that had provoked a storm of protest from right groups, the Justice Ministry said the 28-year-old woman was released on a pardon issued by King Mohammed VI.
I thank God. The experience that Hajar and I and others had was very interesting because I believe even more and I am more convinced of women's rights. I am more convinced that violence against women is not just slogans, but it's a task that must be carried out in all levels. I came out of this pain believing more in Hajar and believing more in women's rights activists, but it was a great experience.
Raizouni was sentenced on September 30th along with her Sudanese fiancé, a gynecologist, an anesthetist and a medical assistant whose convictions were also overturned. The journalist made a victory sign to the waiting media as they emerged from El Arjat prison near Rabat, but she made no statement before joining her family and friends.
The royal pardon is a celebration and a joy not only for Hajar Raizouni, but for all those who believed in her case. I can't find the words to express this joy, and any legal discussion now is bitter in the throats of those who are far from her case.
The journalist at the Akhbar Al-Yum newspaper, which has a history of running to the authorities, denounced the affair as a political trial, saying she had been questioned by police about her family and her writing. Yun Maskin, a director of Akhbar Al-Yum, took to Twitter to hail finally a wise decision. Raizouni was arrested on August 31st as she left a clinic in Rabat. In court, she denied having had an abortion, saying she had been treated for internal bleeding, testimony backed up by her gynecologist. She was sentenced under Article 490 of the Muslim-majority kingdom's legal code. That article punishes sexual relations out of wedlock, while the law also forbids all abortions unless the mother's life is in danger.
According to the World Health Organization, suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds. Although there are no Kenya-specific statistics on teen suicide, it's apparent that a significant number of young people are taking their lives.
These are just some of the recent scary cases of suicide among teenagers that seem to have caught the country by surprise. Children taking their own lives for matters that are seen to be flimsy but hefty on them. Some turn to the news to hang their life frustrations. Elizabeth Mutunga, who is a mother of two, once contemplated taking her own life during her teenage years after frustrations in her family pushed her into suicide thoughts. The human resource professional cum psychologist is of the opinion that recent rise in suicide cases among teenagers could be due to social media influences, as well as parents not being sufficiently present for their children.
What they are seeing, maybe when they see what other people are going or are having in their lives and maybe they don't have. It could also be issues of drug abuse. Others could be just feeling depressed about what is going on around their life. There's a lot of things that are going on, and I know as parents we are thinking what is actually stressing them, but they also have their own issues to deal with.
The number of suicides reported in Kenya rose by 58% between the year 2008 and 2017 to reach a number of 421. This is according to World Health Organization statistics, which also show that more men are likely to commit suicide compared to women. Elizabeth notes that helping children and teenagers overcome depression, which is the major factor driving teens to suicide, can be avoided by creating an environment conducive for both physical and mental well-being and resolved simply by talking.
They actually want a present mother and a father to be there in their lives. So a lot of them, because they have no parent around, they will either go to their friends for advice. Of course, then they don't get the correct advice, or they'll go to social media, or maybe the house help who is there, who you also do not know who is working with your child or who is taking care of your child most of the time. So yes, as parents, we also have a role to play.
The World Population Review ranks Kenya at position 114 among 175 countries with the highest suicide rate. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among youth in the age bracket of between 15 to 29. Besides depression, other risk factors include access to firearms, physical or sexual abuse, unemployment, strained relationships, chronic physical illnesses, financial difficulties, loneliness, and exposure to the suicidal behavior of others.
Years of civil turmoil has meant that Libya's infrastructure became dilapidated. This week, however, the launch of an urban transport scheme has brought hope to residents seeking a return to normalcy.
Imported from China, the brand new vehicles will make their first trips in the coming days across a city that for 6 months has lived with the deadly rhythm of combat in its outer suburbs. Since April, Eastern strongman Khalifa Haftar has been battling forces loyal to the United Nations recognized Government of National Accord for control of Tripoli. Equipped with Wi-Fi and air conditioning, the blue and white buses will run 20 routes from Yangzor, 15 kilometers west of Tripoli, to Tajura, 12 kilometers east of the city. Another route will travel 25 kilometers south to the airport. Transport company Al Sahim, whose name means arrow, wants residents to re-embrace public transport as a way of reducing congestion in this Mediterranean city where urbanization sprawls along the coast. With commutes lengthening, increasingly dilapidated private transport options aren't meeting people's needs, according to Al Sahim.
This is a public transport project. The company, Al Sahim, decided to launch this project because it serves the citizens in their daily lives and commutes, whether for their children in school or for their work. Also, it has to do with the city itself, as it suffers from congestion, which is very clearly present in some alleys, and the small sub-streets started getting blocked by a large amount of cars.
Every day, Mohammed Al-Bazoudi commutes via minibus or ancient taxi from his home in Yanzur to his clothing shop in town.
Once we succeed in the Tripoli project for transportation, which is considered one of the most difficult projects, we will move to other projects and cities. In parallel, we are working on another project, which is the first transportation or intercity transportation. Hopefully, we will soon see it through.
Until now, those without a car have had the choice between taking a taxi or relying on rundown private minibuses. Konmani said Al Sahim had contracted Chinese manufacturer King Long to provide 145 vehicles over 2 years at a cost of $13 million.
The contract we signed was for the supply of 145 buses. During the preparation of technical specifications, there was a tax on the exchange rate whereby the rate of US dollar was equivalent to 3 dinars and 90 piastres. That's the one problem we haven't found a solution for.
After launching its Tripoli project, Al Sahim hopes to introduce intercity lines, in particular connecting isolated southern cities dotted across a vast desert landscape in a country of more than 1.7 million square kilometers. But if buses will be a boom for most citizens, some taxi drivers worry for their future earnings.
According to the World Bank, Madagascar ranks 184th out of 190 countries in terms of access to electricity. Electrical installations are in a state of disrepair. Electricity is seen as a luxury, with rampant cases of illegal electrical tapping on the rise.
Claudine and her family have been living in this makeshift tent for almost 6 months. Their home was one of 20 houses that burnt down in this neighbourhood of Madagascar's capital. The fire was caused by an electrical short circuit.
The short circuit started on that house over there. As the house is made of dry wood, when the pole caught fire, the electrical wire spread the fire to our house, which is also made of wood.
In Antananarivo, 60% of fires are triggered by short circuits. These technicians from Madagascar's water and electricity company, Girama, are here to replace an electricity pole. It's a rare sight. The vast majority of electrical installations are 100 years old, with illegal power tapping making the situation even more dangerous.
People connect wherever they want without permission, and the transformers can't take the overload. An installation can only hold 3 amps, for example, and there are people doing welding, using hair appliances and other high-voltage devices. Cables from their homes can overheat and burn.
But Girama itself has been accused of mismanagement for many years. It has sold its electricity at a loss, buying kilowatt hours from private suppliers at twice the price it sells to consumers. The result? A colossal debt of €300 million and frequent power cuts to save electricity. This electronic equipment salesman is tired of the power cuts and has now turned to solar panels.
When I used to buy electricity from Girama, whenever we watched TV shows, it would always cut out when it got interesting. Whereas since we've been using solar panels, we can use all our devices.
Only 1 in 10 people in Madagascar currently have access to electricity. But with the country enjoying nearly 2,800 hours of sunshine per year, turning to solar energy could offer the country a more reliable and greener source of power.
On Africa Focus, we love hearing from you, so make sure you get interactive with us on our various social media pages. Remember, you can view this program along with a wide array of other programs on DSTV channel 268, on Azam TV channel 138, and on Zuku channel 53. On behalf of the entire team here on Africa Focus, thank you for keeping us company on this exciting journey across the continent. Keep it switched.